Hit record. Mr. Simon Phillips, thank you for joining us on our second ever live Visualize Value office hours, but our 41st Visualize Value office hours of all time. Thank you, mate, for coming in. I teed this up with an email and a tweet earlier today with a sensational headline: $200,000 in debt to a $10 million business in 2.5 years. So where we're going to start is a bit of your story, Simon, where we met, and then we're going to spend 10 minutes there, and then we're going to get into some of the fundamentals of e-commerce and drop some knowledge, get everyone to walk away with some new insight, new ways to think about the world of e-commerce, what's coming next. So with all that said, we'll rewind about 2.5 years, 2.5 years. We met on Facebook. We're both kind of swirling around.
2.5 years ago. And can I also just say a big shout out to my 55 Twitter followers.
Yeah.
If you guys are on, I love you.
Yeah. Yeah. Ecom Simo, 1M.
Ecom Simo, get in it.
Yeah, get on there. But hopefully by the end of this, you're going to earn a few more. So 2.5 years ago, we met on Facebook, weirdly hovering around different entrepreneurial e-commerce, Facebook advertising groups, got together, became fast friends, spent, hundreds of hours on Zoom calls since, met in New York last year. But let's rewind all the way back to where you were before we got in touch to contextualize the e-commerce journey. So take it away, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jack. I'd just like to say I'm really grateful to be here in front of a whole bunch of people, tell the story, and hopefully deliver some value, perhaps in visual format as well, which makes sense. So, mate, I've got like a pre-baked story which I can do, which does the whole journey. So I was a bodybuilder when I came out of high school, bit of a bully kid, got into health and fitness, got huge. Started I couldn't get these singlets I wanted, so I imported a bunch from the States, started selling them. At that time I built a little front end on the back of PayPal. Like this is 8 or 9 years ago now. And then I got into Shopify, developed the store, got on a bit of a whirlwind journey, did really well, got up to $3-4 million turnover. I was 23 at the time, sold half the business for like 1.1 mil to a couple of cashed up affiliate marketer / angel investors out of the UK. Mm-hmm. And then I, from there, basically royally fucked it up. Didn't make another dollar. Got into all of the wrong things that a young, directionless man, boy from a small town that you give $1 million to does. And over the next 2 years, basically destroyed the business. And so I ended up moving home at the end of that journey, a couple of $100,000 in debt, having sold with no business. And so I found myself kind of, after having been on top of the world with everything I thought I wanted as the young bully kid, to starting again, in debt by myself in a spare room at my mum's house, which was pretty sad. But that journey of kind of destroying the e-commerce business became the conceptual framework that would then build what we have today in the Magnitude Group, which obviously, Jack, you've been a party to the whole time. And the key bit in that journey from a business perspective was I had, when I got all this money, I went out and got a bunch of agency service providers and consultants, digital agency, web developer, 3PL, contract manufacturer, fancy fashion designer. And I take full responsibility for destroying my business, but they, this group of well-intentioned, capable people, none of them had enough, whatever was required to sort of save me from myself or save the business. And so you had a situation where a whole bunch of people fulfilled their deliverables, made money, and I lost everything. And so that concept there became the organizing idea for us to build what we have today. And what we have today, maybe I'll share the little, maybe that's a good opportunity to bring up what the group looks like today. Oh, the host has disabled screen sharing. So if you could sort that out for me.
You got to be
100%.
careful.
So
There you go. Try that now.
beautiful.
Oh yeah, 73. You're flying, mate.
There's my yeah. There's my Twitter. Make sure to follow me. And here's where we sit today, so I can talk through that. Which is along the journey, I had no money to start my own thing, and so I started a digital agency, started scaling a couple of other e-commerce brands, and ran into Brad Lindsay, who owned if we go back one, who owned a big supply chain management firm, and so I met him. My clients couldn't keep up with the demand, and he ended up buying half of my digital agency. And then the idea between us then became, well, hold on a minute, we've got this big logistics business now. You look after the back end, I'll look after the front end, and together we'll build what would have saved me. So that became our North Star. So everything that we've done to build this business from that date has been around, I'm an e-commerce business owner in the market with a brand and a product, and we've essentially built a global system that exists across IT, logistics, your brand, your website, your content, and digital advertising to close the loop for an e-commerce business. So there's no, what I'd found in my journey was that, you could do 8 out of 10 things right and fulfill X deliverables here, and when one piece was broken, the whole thing fell over. And that seemed to be the model in the marketplace. It's like, we'll do a bit for you. And I really wanted a business where we financially guaranteed all of our strategy work. We do performance profit share deals. So, hey, if I make you heaps of money, I'll get paid a bunch. If I make you nothing, I won't get anything. Made a lot of sense to me, right? Because that's what I wanted. And then you couldn't do that if you didn't control enough of the outcome. And so now you've got this logistics business, supply chain solutions, you've got this digital agency, Glass Elephant, and then not a single client ever would produce the type of content we want or do it on time. So boom, another roadblock, and we went out and acquired a creative agency, Collab, plugged that into the model, and that then sort of closed the loop. So now we have expertise across the whole gambit, the whole value chain of direct-to-consumer e-commerce. But I think quite importantly, it wasn't about vertical integration. Like, I'm not a marketer that tried to do logistics, and then I'm also not a content guy. I get what brand is, but I'm a performance marketing bloke, So we brought in this thought leader in Kennedy with Collab, and we brought in this thought leader in Brad with the supply chain business. And so it's 3 different businesses with different skill sets, with different technical teams, all operating under one one strategic framework, which is actually what Jack and we built together. So that's kind of the story to now. And really our big break was we got one client that was doing sort of $3 million a year annually last year. And we grabbed them, we scaled them into the States, and we'll finish on around 50 million this year. So and we did that on a profit share, which gave us heaps of cash. And that was the kind of rocket fuel for the whole business. We've got 70 people now in the digital creative agency, and 350 in the supply chain firm. And that's kind of the story of the Magnitude Group, how it came to be from my story transitioning into the agency, into the supply chain business, into the creative agency. And the next steps for us are we're a logistics facility in Utah and Amsterdam and New Zealand now. We're doing Canada, UK, Japan, and South Korea next year, and then Australia, Taiwan after that. The idea being that we've got a New Zealand-owned global logistics network and a revenue generation offer on top. And so ambitious brands can come to us and focus on what they should focus on, which is their brand, their community, and their product. And then we fill the rest of those gaps. And so that's kind of my journey and experience in e-commerce across the various fields to date. Was that 10 minutes? Right on the dot.
Spot on, mate. Yeah, perfect. So I think one of our early, like we bonded early on the like inefficacy of the common agency model too, right? That idea that the way the agency model has come to be is that like, hey, we did our job, but if this person, and this person doesn't do their job, it's got nothing to do with us. So I think that like huge leap from taking responsibility for one section that you can't guarantee to, fill in the entire, taking responsibility across the board is one of the themes that I think we'll keep coming back to throughout this. But now we've teed up the story and what you do, I think getting into sort of the principles that you deploy against the infrastructure that you've built, right? How do you think about what makes a brand successful as a direct consumer product and, brand in general? And then also, what do you look for as you're scaling those engagements? What are the important metrics to pay attention to as you scale? Because it still feels to me like you've built this thing around the way you think about e-commerce, and that like philosophy is what I'd like to get into for a good section of this too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think before we dive straight into that as well, for where it started for me is despite the technical acumen I had for delivering results in e-commerce. And looking back now, it's I try not to take too much credit for that early success, because sort of 6, 7, 8 years ago, you could just put stuff on Facebook, press boost, and it would make money. Mm-hmm. That was basically the premise.
Right.
But the two big lessons that I came out with was I needed to get sober. So no drugs and alcohol for me, they tear my life apart, and I needed a mentor. And so within the first sort of 6 months of coming out of, having success, blowing it all up, those were two like big macro pieces where I was like, I'm going to do this. So I'm completely sober, and then got a mentor. And then that allowed me the framework, I guess, to deploy my expertise. Mm-hmm. And so what I would urge anyone to do before they get into the tactics of perfect e-commerce is, do you have the pillars and the framework in your life for yourself as a human being to actually go out and achieve what you can achieve with your skill set, and then keep it once you get there? Because otherwise you're just on a hamster wheel of fuckery, and it's a road to nowhere.
Yeah.
Those are kind of like from me, is I can pull back all the success to those two really big decisions. And then, so I guess I wonder whether the kind of state of e-commerce as a whole, and like my journey through it over the last 8 or 9 years, is like a good place to frame it up before we go into the kind of technical stuff that we look for.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. And so I touched on it earlier, 8 or 9 years ago, it was reasonably easy in some ways. In other ways, it was difficult. We didn't have the tools to support us now. There were a lot more barriers to entry, and it was a lot less understood. And so now I'd say we're sort of nearing the apex of that early adoption curve, and especially with what's happened around coronavirus, right? So I think that the market has been catapulted forward at least 3, maybe 5 years from an e-commerce perspective, where we were going to be in 5 years, and we're there now, which I think creates a massive opportunity for anyone with the skill set or the willingness to pick up the skill set, because you've got an amount of demand in the market for the content creation and the digital advertising and the logistics, and that the market hasn't pulled that out yet. So I think one of the things that I talk to people about and that I experienced was, I remember thinking 7 or 8 years ago when I was printing money on Facebook, oh my God, it's too late, I've missed the boat, because It wasn't as profitable as it was the year before.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've talked to before, but that's a massive theme, is I think now I realize, having had the experiences I've had, that every single day or every single year now, it's the ads are the cheapest they'll ever be. Now is the best time that you'll ever have, and there's still massive amounts of opportunity. You know, we took a brand from 3 million to 50 odd million and we did it in 18 months, and we did it at more than a 5x return on ad spend. And it's a simple product. It's nothing too crazy. And so those opportunities still exist. And one of the things, the chatter I see, is that ad costs are high, Facebook's broken, it won't work, you know, drop shipping's dead, X, Y, Z.
Right.
But I would urge everyone that it's not at all. And if anything, with what Corona's done, is there's opportunities, there's massive pressure on the logistics networks. You know, all of the 3PLs across the USA this year, they've put caps on everyone's orders going out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's businesses left, right, and center desperately looking for people with digital skills, and they're not that hard to pick up. So, and especially if you're willing to come in now, and I think we talked about this years ago, but the all care, no responsibility, I fulfilled my deliverables, pointing fingers game is an archaic, broken system. It's still the incumbent, but it's dying. And so my view is that if you can come in, if you're a service provider and you can come in and do anything around performance or guarantees, you'll build a business really quickly.
Agreed. Yeah, and there's a huge hesitation to doing that, right? Just because of the perceived downside in the short term, but like the upside is just enormous if you can crack it. And you know, if you can't offer a service with that level of guarantee, you got to start questioning whether you should be practicing that service, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can be smart with it, be commercial with it, but at the same time, I think it's the future. And if you can set it up now before it becomes commonplace, that's where all of the extra value is. And so I think for e-commerce now, the direct to consumer window is closing, and it's closing even faster with coronavirus. But right now, right this second, and perhaps the next 6, 12, 18 months could be the most opportunity that the e-commerce world has ever seen, ever. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of institutional focus and cash that I think is going to start flowing into the space that hasn't existed before. So that's, I think, the lay of the land where we sit today. And I guess what we're pushing for our team members, for our clients, and what I've taken a long time to learn is, yeah, it's interesting to articulate, but I guess this concept of customer centricity and data driven, you know, we talked about it earlier, but those terms get bandied about. Everyone throws them. Yeah, we do stuff that's data driven and we're customer centric. But what I see is primarily in my clients and myself is you say things like that, and then you build the brand or the product or the service for what you want, and then you don't make decisions based on data.
Right.
Like that's, I think, the general, if you said, hey, is your business customer centric and data driven? People would be like, fuck yeah. That's like, those are our North Stars. We're all about that. And then if you looked at what they actually do, it would likely be nearly the complete opposite. And so I think for e-commerce specifically, from a fundamentals perspective, I've started really honing in on your cost per click, your average order value, your conversion rate, and your gross profit, which is essentially how much does it cost to get someone to the website? What are they, you know, how many of those people actually buy from me? What do they spend when they're on my website? And then how much do I make off that purchase? And there's a myriad of sub-metrics that influence each one of those. But those are the big buckets, you know, and so we'll go around our business asking people, you know, client X, what was the average order value yesterday? You know, if you don't know it, like, you need to know it. That's the That's the deal. So those 4 big metrics, understanding how those play, and then making every decision off the back of it. So how does that decision influence your conversion rate? Why are you doing that piece of content? Why are you spending 3 hours altering the branding on that top of funnel ad? Because, well, have you got any data or surveys or anything from your customer that tells you that they care? Have you got is this going to make a tangible impact on average order value, conversion rate, gross profit, or cost per click? Like, stop it. Stop tinkering around with the detail, the irrelevant detail as much, and just focus on the big driving forces. And that's the beautiful part of e-commerce, I think, is just about everything you do can influence those metrics, and then just start making informed decisions around it. And so that's my, I guess that's the key. That's the foundation for everything else that you do. It's just understand those key metrics and then make decisions off the back of it.
What do you think is preventing people at the earlier stages of the e-commerce journey understanding those metrics? I'm 100% guilty of it as well. It's like there's a cognitive dissonance. I think it's also that same process of, some level of reality check that you cannot deny this to be true anymore if you want to make progress past this point.
Yeah. I think maybe you hit it on the head right there. The dose of reality is uncomfortable. There's no hiding. They're not complex things.
Right.
And perhaps it's, they're not, it's none of them are complex. I don't know if there are barriers there. And I don't know why through my e-commerce journey and maybe I just wasn't ever told to do it. I'm not sure. Maybe it's so obvious and so simple and,
Right.
and so layman.
Just assume
it's
you
not
don't
even
need to
worth,
examine it.
It's not even worth looking at. Or maybe everyone that's listening to this is going, yeah, obviously, bro. Like
Right.
that's so simple. Why are you even talking about it?
Yeah.
But my experience is that we especially in the earlier stages, it's all about the lip service. You talk about the metrics and then you talk about your strategies and your tactics separately. So they don't necessarily coexist. You're not talking about your strategies and context directly in companionship with how they're going to influence those metrics, because that's your scoreboard, right? And so if you're not tracking what you're doing against your scoreboard, it's just it becomes less relevant. So yeah, and perhaps there's an element as well of, well, okay, I know my AOV's X, it's $70. I know I need to get it higher, but I don't know what to do. So what do I do next? And we don't have the bandwidth in this call to go through that, but I think we're going to link at the end. There's a event series that we did with Shopify that kind of goes into the minutiae detail around all of these things we're talking about. And okay, so average order value is the problem. What are the sub metrics that then influence that? And then what are things you can do to increase that, like bundling or upsells or a new product line entirely? And I think as well, maybe there's, once you've got some inertia, some impetus and you're moving, you've got momentum, it's hard to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And so like your AOV $60, you've tried bundling, you've done XYZ, but you just spent so much time setting that product up and you're invested in it and you love it and you think it's supposed to work, but the numbers are telling you no. Like how many bad relationships do we stay in when you know it, like everything, all the signs are telling you this is broken, but you just kind of stick it out for another year and a half. Like it's kind of human nature, I suppose. So
Simon just dropped in the chat, sunk cost fallacy. You've invested so much where it's like, I'm going to turn it around. It's going to happen. But in this space, it's you're getting so much data that can tell you one way or another. I think just to react to what you said, as somebody that has, like, I guess, justified not doing certain things, it's also I think the connotation of performance marketing for some people it just makes people nervous. I think, like, if you are going to send 500 people or 1,000 people or 10 times more people to my store the day after tomorrow, is that going to have some far-reaching negative impact over time? And it's exactly what you want, but at the same time, I think people resist it. Maybe it's unique to me. It's like there's some resistance in, oh, what if I make an ad that's too convincing and this thing just takes off? Like, I have some weird aversion to that it's a very strange thing. Maybe it's like a brand thing that you are pushing up against.
I think that might be more unique to you than the general populace.
Maybe.
And I also think you're in a unique position where the long game, slow burn, organic potentially supports your business model more than your traditional consumer goods e-commerce store. But I think if there was a more common or problem with performance marketing, it's people are, what I find with newer stores is they're worried about a brand. They're worried about an amount of brand equity that doesn't exist. Well, what about my brand?
Yeah.
Fortunately, you don't actually have a brand. You don't have the luxury of giving two F's about your brand because it doesn't actually exist. It's not a thing. No one cares. That's the reality. So what we should do first is let's do everything within our power to break the back of this thing, make a few bucks, make some dollars, and then get to the point where you have the luxury and the maneuverability to start making cute decisions for the brand. So, and that's not for everyone. If you've got resources, influences, cash, a very unique product, and you're coming in hot from the start, that's awesome. But in my experience, generally, and I think probably most of the people here today, you're actually working with an amount of low resource, like you're on your low resources, right? You're bootstrapping it. You're working on it after hours. You're doing everything you can to make this work. So focus entirely around getting job number one done, which is get the metrics to a point where you've got a profitable business. You're buying traffic with an AOV and conversion rate that support break even at top of funnel. Boom. Like, that's job number one for us anyway. That's what we do first. And with clients, and it's one of the reasons we're moving more towards internal brands, is it's hard to take clients on the journey to move outside their comfort zone to a place that's profitable.
To get the numbers to work, you have to do things that they haven't done, right?
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, exactly. Like you're in your comfort zone, and that's you in there, and it feels good. But everything you want is outside your comfort zone, and you want to stay comfortable while you go outside it. It doesn't make sense. But the agency client relationship is often such that, well, okay, can you do it? And there's 7 other people pitching for the business, going, we can do exactly that, exactly as you want it at that KPI, and we won't. Brand? Are you kidding me? We love your brand. Your brand's amazing. It's fucking perfect. And it doesn't work, or it does work, and you just bring clients through and churn them, and it's just this big whirlpool of churn and people potentially doing the right thing or potentially getting lucky. And so what we've started to do with our clients is you must allocate 20% of budget to off-brand content that we're able to do whatever we want with. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's cool. We'll keep trying. But then usually what happens is it's not so bad. It's not tyrannical. It's not destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And then the numbers don't lie. So then you get some data going, hey, see, this is profitable. One of the metaphors I've used for effective performance marketing in the context of direct consumer advertising on Facebook, Pinterest, etc., is you're in Vegas and you've got those dudes with the CDs, and they like stop you on the street aggressively to like look at my mixtape. Like, it's uncomfortable, but they get results because they're aggressive. They're on the street, they get in your face, they're screaming at you. The Facebook news feed is that Vegas strip with a bunch of people just walking past, scrolling. And if you feel like you can sit there with your perfect brand and a cup of tea and go, hey, like, do you want to stop and chat to me for a second? Like, it's likely not going to happen. So it's about being that hawker on the street, getting in people's faces, stopping them in their tracks aggressively. You can do that with positive emotion. You can do that with negative emotion, right? Generally, as humans, we respond to negative emotions more powerfully. So you stop them in your tracks, take them in a journey, and then every touch point from that point onwards can be elegant and graceful and perfectly on brand and amazing. So the website, the customer sequences, the remarketing ads, all of it is this curated brand experience. And I liken that to after you've aggressively hit this person up on the street, you're like, hey, do you want to come have a cup of tea with me? You take them into your house, you sit them down, you're like, oh God, that was horrible, wasn't it? So like, how are you? What's your name? And you just have a really nice brand experience, but you won't get them through the door often without smacking them in the face. And I think that's the uncomfortable, difficult part that a lot of brands miss, and they leave a lot of money on the table from a digital advertising, performance marketing, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, etc. point of view. And so, I've had conversations where I'm like, don't even look at your Facebook top of funnel like it's part of your brand. Like, it's a different thing. It's like, we just want to stop them and get them to look at our X widget, because there's 100 other people on their newsfeed today trying to flick them something different. So if you're not willing to be aggressive enough with the CPMs today, especially, it often won't work.
Yeah, fascinating. We got some questions piling up here. I don't know if you are game to go through
Questions.
Yeah, we'll do questions definitely, but the viability of a brand. We talk about that for a second?
Absolutely.
So
this
just for context, if how would Glass Elephant qualify a client as, we can do something with this? I think that will be a helpful context for everyone here too.
I can take you through it. So basically, this is our viability matrix. And so this is specifically to our profit share and internal brands perspective. We'll work with clients outside of this, but if we're getting to the point where we're in this as a partnership together and we're putting our balls on the line, we'll put them through this viability matrix. And so this is the distillation of my 10 years of experience into what actually matters. And so a couple of things at the start for a go, no go is the founder reliable? Because I guess we've gotten to the point now where we don't need to deal with unreliable dickheads that make our lives harder. So that's just job number one. Like, can I trust this guy that started it? And then two, can I explain the product easily? Now, this is really specific to us. So this might not be a go, no go for for another business, for a niche agency, whatever, for your brand or product. But for us, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, can we quickly articulate the value proposition to the customer? Because we've only got them for 6 seconds. So that for us, that's a big go, no go. Because what we're trying to do here is we're not trying to get into a game that's hard. We want to play the game that's easy to win. And then if you're bad at what you do, but you've set the game up right, you can still win. Right. So it's like, this is all about like making the game as easy as possible when you start. And then it's going like, okay, how much cash have we got? What's the story behind the business? So hypercritical. Is there a unique selling proposition? What are the market conditions and human sentiment? So this is things around like, where's the world going? Do we care about it? Is it eco? Very good example of this is a business that's blowing up right now called for patriots. It's survival food in the USA. They're doing like obscene numbers. And why? Because the human sentiment right now, because of coronavirus, is we're scared, and like, are we going to have food? It's food security. So, you know, you'd get your max score there. And this is interesting as well for context. This is a guide. This is not something that we go by gospel, because, for example, that human sentiment piece alone, I could have a niggly average order value, no story, and go, nah, that'll work anyway. Like, that's huge.
Right.
But these are
There's
kind
some
of the
gut
market.
layered on top of this, but this is a great checklist, right?
Correct. So then you're going the big ones. And so these are, if you look at the priority as well, margin and average order value. So that's what I talked about. It's your gross profit and your average order value. Those are absolutely critical. And perhaps, I mean, margin's an obvious one. You need to have, we work with businesses really, minimum 70% raw margin, preferably 80%, because with the performance marketing, direct to consumer stuff on Facebook and Instagram, with the CPMs the way they are, the cost of the media, you really need that cash to fuel your cost per acquisitions, or it's really hard to make it work. And then the average order value is it's pretty much as easy to convince someone to spend $50 as it is to spend $100, like generally speaking. So that average order value being above $100 gives you enough GP in the first purchase to buy that customer off Facebook, etc., and still have enough left in the kitty to run your business. So those ones are huge, like absolutely massive. And then is it a consumable product? So can we drive a subscription off the back of it? Direct responsible, that's going, does this business have emotional triggers, emotional hooks that we can press to get people to feel things? For example, visualize value is not like, should we do this for visualize value?
Sure. Let's do it. Let's try and do it. Let's leave 15 minutes for questions. If you think we can get something meaningful out in 7 minutes, let's do it.
Yeah. So I'd go, founder capital, you're not a baller. Your story is amazing. You've come out of this corporate world and you don't want to do it anymore. Your selling proposition is unique because 0 people can do what you do with design, but at the same time, a lot of people are doing the info products. That's an interesting one. I'd probably go there just because your graphic design is so unique. I've never seen anyone do it. Market conditions are perfect. Human sentiment, everyone's wanting to move towards this lifestyle of freedom. Demographic and audience size is interesting. It's not that massive for design, but then as we're scaling, I'd probably somewhere in the middle on that. That's not perfect. You know, it's not food. Everyone buys food.
Right.
Margin. I don't know. You've got a reasonable margin. Info products have great margin. You've got a good average order value. Is it consumable or subscription based? Some of it is. Some of the products is. Yeah. One of the products is. So kind of not really actually. It's not really that direct responsible. You're kind of speaking to logic. So for example, an example of a great direct responsible brand is a skincare brand focused around acne. You know, you talk to what it feels like for someone that has acne, and boom, it's explosive. The product's not really that easy to explain. I think you do a great job of it, but I don't think it's that easy to explain.
Yeah, I would agree.
Content creation's pretty difficult. Probably somewhere in the middle on that. Is there a replicable competitor? This is one that I talk to people around, is like, is there someone out there that's doing what you do and you can steal most of what they do, but throw 20% GST on it, change it slightly and do it better? I think that's really valuable, especially if they're an old brand. You know, are they of this old retail age and they're doing a thing over here, but you can spin it, give it a modern, clean minimalist brand and put it on Facebook. That's a really good example. And so for you, I think just not really, that doesn't really exist. You kind of, and again, you're doing this at the start, right? Before we've known it's going to be a bit of a smash hit. So is it globally scalable? Absolutely it is. Can we take this to the 4 corners of the earth? What are the capital requirements? Are they high? Are they low? do you have a 12-week stock turn, or do you have a, are you making your stuff in country? You know, what does it look like? For you, it's you're designing it yourself, so your capital requirements are low. Can they replicate you? Yes, like realistically they can. Like people can come in and just take your stuff and steal it, right?
Yeah.
Competitor strength, direct to consumer. I would actually probably mid. There's a lot of people doing info products, but I think there's really room to do it better. Competitor strength overall. That's going. What do the big brands, what are the Coca-Colas of the world in your industry look like?
Yeah.
Are they doing a good job? And I'd say I think that's university, and they're strong, but it's on a decline.
End of days approaching.
Yeah. Does your product have a shelf life? Does it run out? Is it fashion? Are you gonna have to reinvent it every 3 months? That's your shelf life and seasonable. You're good there. Do you have to have a whole bunch of SKUs, which makes your life difficult? Not really. Is it easy to ship? Yes. Is the lead time good? Yes. So you get like a 70%. For us, if you're getting like a 80, that's a great result. And 70 is like pretty good. So you'd look at this harder. And obviously we blasted through that. But
That's awesome.
Honestly, mate, that's what we're looking for, is those 23 items.
Very cool, man. Thank you for blasting through that. Let's rip into some questions.
Can I have 1 more minute?
Yeah.
Because I think this is what I wanna. What we do from here is we then go into
I
a
didn't
more
realize we were scrolling down. Yeah, keep going.
viability piece. So these are all really good question starters. And so I think what we should do is give this to the community as well. Is like, hey, take this and run your business through it. Take all the notes as you work through the process, and then use that to then go, now I won't show this now because this has got some client stuff on it, but we go into more detail around those questions. And then we go, what are the inspiration brands? What's the context of the market? What's our core offer? What products support that offer? How do our products have a special sauce? What are the high level numbers behind it? Then we build out a forecast, which is this massive document here, which I'll be happy to provide to you guys as well. And this again is the distillation of my 10 years of e-commerce. So this is a demand planning tool that flows into a sales forecast with a P&L, marketing spend calculator, profit share calculator, and it all is integrated and drives off itself. So it'll tell you if you're going to run out of stock in month 6 based on your sales forecast, and it'll tell you based on your conversion rate and your average order value whether you're going to do a 2 ROAS or a 4 ROAS and how that affects your profitability. And so that's the next process. Then we go, what humans do we need to support that forecast? You'll notice here people start, and this is massive. I want to just, for me personally, the first thing people do is they go, oh yeah, so what's the logo going to be, right? And start designing the logo. For us, brand and the logo, it's step number 10. It's after you've figured out the viability, the numbers, who's going to work it, what the offer is, what the special sauce is. Then we ask a whole bunch of questions, and then we figure out the commercials of the deal. And that's the process that we go through to take an idea into something truly viable that could achieve global scale. There you go. Anyway, we know a bit of a rant there.
Fantastic, mate. No, that's awesome. Yeah, and if you are open to sharing any of that stuff, I'm sure people will be very grateful. So I appreciate that. But you got to follow Ecom Simo to get any of this stuff, right?
Yeah, 100%. If you're not following Ecom Simo on Twitter, that's ECOMSIMO on Twitter.
We're trying to get Simo onto Twitter. I've been trying to convince him for years. I think it's gonna be a very sharp curve over there sharing this stuff. So let's jump into some
yeah, I hope so.
Services, some questions here. Sorry. So first, there was a ton of questions early on about your back wall. So let's get the short, the skinny on the back wall.
Okay, so this is a huge part of my journey and my personal development has been the very serious, reasonably spiritual research-driven use of psychedelics to both open my mind and become a better person emotionally, figure out who I am, where I want to go, and I guess remove some of the blockages of whatever traumatic events I've been through, right? And so the quick version is it was right around the time I met you, actually. I went to do a 10-day ayahuasca retreat in Peru, and I'm not doing the quick version, sorry. And
That's great. That's great.
Before I went, I got the 15 closest people in my life. So my mentor and business partner, my mum, my dad, and my best friends. I asked some ex-girlfriends, some did it, some didn't. And I asked them 15 questions like, could you list what you think are the most positive aspects about my character? Do you love me? Is there anything you'd like to say to me or bring up that you haven't before? Something that you should have called me out on that you didn't? So all the positive things about me, all the negative things about me. One question was, I'm about to blast off. I'm about to consume a 10,000-year-old plant medicine and blast off into another dimension for the next 8 to 14 hours. What would you like to say to me that you think might affect positive change on me as a person?
That's great.
And then I read all of those before I worked through the ceremonies. And then the best ones, I printed them out and put them in these frames. So the things I needed to remember about myself, and then the things that I still needed to work on. And so the idea was, as I'm, in this house at home, couple $100,000 in debt, rebuilding my life, trying to be a better person, I was surrounded by the truth of those I love. And so that was kind of like, I'd come in the morning, and I still do. I'm like, oh shit, still working on that. Like, work in progress. We'll get there, and so that's the story there.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I think you've inspired a few people by the looks of the chat.
Yeah, that's what we want. Let's go.
That's what we want. All right, we're going to completely flip on its head and go for some tactical answers to some questions we got here as well. So you mentioned that, actually, let's talk about, this is related. So let's talk about mentorship. So you mentioned, Brad, as you got into the story about how the business scaled, but I think it's valuable to just talk about that. Like, what has that done for you, and how did that come about?
So, yeah, I think one of the pieces to this puzzle, right, is it's everything. So the Magnitude Group and Glass Elephant specifically, which I'm a co-founder of, it's sort of been a lot of my vision. The Mentorship Group is mine and Brad's vision come together, but without Brad, Glass Elephant and Collab, it doesn't exist. I could not have built this. It's not my personality type. I am not, honestly, I'm not a number one. Like, I'm not the CEO of my own business. And we said that from the beginning. I'm the CSO, Chief Strategy Officer. I'm off to the side. I don't have the necessary capability or inclination yet to be a CEO or the boss, the number one. And so after building this, not many 23-year-olds from a small town with no family backing or business or anything like that sell their first business for 1.1 mil at 23. So that's like a crazy success story. And then probably even less, completely fuck it up and lose everything in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so my thing was coming out of that and kind of letting go a lot of the ego is like, okay, you've got a mortgage on your parents' house. You have to pay them back. Your life doesn't begin until you do that. So you need to find someone that you can funnel all of the things that you're good at through, and then just know your place and toe the line. And so the deal with Brad is that we'll have extensive arguments, debates, etc., about the best way forward. And then when he's like, no, we're doing X, even if I hate it, I toe the line and we do it. So like, there's a clear, he's the boss. And like, people go out and get mentors or bosses or people, and they, when someone asks you for advice and then they instantly challenge it, it's like, well, okay. Like, they take my advice. So my relationship with Brad is one of mutual respect. He covers a lot of my downsides. Mutual respect. We support each other's sort of weaknesses and strengths. And then there's a clear chain of command where he's the boss and I do what I'm told. And for the first time in my life, he's held me accountable. So I've never really had accountability to anyone ever. And that was one of the things I desperately needed to actually reach my potential and stay sober and do all the right things. So yeah, Brad Lindsay as a part of the story is he's basically the whole story. Like, I don't think really anything, but and in addition to that, you, right, Jack, is when I met you, and I don't know if this fucking happens without you spending all that time articulating the brand and supporting me and believing in me. And so you've been a mentor of mine. And then Matt, our Headland, our new CEO, without him, none of this would be possible. And he's a mentor. And then David Glenn is his background's investment banking. And so I guess along this journey, to anyone that would listen, I've just shouted my vision from the rooftops. Hey, I did this, I lost all of it, but I want to build this global e-commerce machine that makes millions of dollars. Please help me get on my journey. And I'll just say that to everyone. And then the people that are older and wiser and have skill sets, I just grab a hold of them. And then I always try to at least deliver more value than they deliver to me. So Gary Vee has like the 49-51 rule. You're one of the few people I think I haven't done that with. Like, I still am in debt. And so we have that, right? Like, whenever I'm just like, oh, can we do a meeting? Can I help you with whatever? And so I think finding people that mentors in any shape or fashion, delivering more value than they deliver you, and just clinging on to them, and then then listen to the advice you get.
Right.
Pick the horse and then back it. So that's kind of my rant on mentors.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it's like there's plenty of counter examples where the access and the ability to follow people that are doing great things is so easy, but the piece of it that ends up working is the extreme accountability that comes with either shared incentives or just I've met Brad as well, just a phenomenal human being, and it's hard to find people like that that are gonna give up. He didn't have to do it, right? It's like there's probably a lot of work that went in, and but I think how you get there is the passion that you exert and the expertise that you clearly have in the space. It's like that is infectious, and it brings people into your orbit as well. But the other piece I was gonna talk about was just the acknowledgement that you need help as well. It's like, it's very hard to get to that place, especially when you have some sort of in talent that you've built up, or you can generate part of the result on your own. So I would love to hear you just talk about I guess what clicked in order for you to keep asking for help and knowing that there are always people ahead of you that you can go to for help, and how you think about that process.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good question. I always said I got bullied at high school, and I'm going to go way back with this, but I think it's important. It's I don't think I was really bullied as much as I thought. I really just wanted to be one of the cool kids, and I wasn't. And then that sat with me. And I guess maybe the real key personality trait is I'm hyper competitive. So I wanted to win, wanted to be the best at everything, and then wasn't. And then so in that first journey of business and life, I was the man. I knew it all. I look at this, da 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 da. And so although I was anxious and depressed and just basically self-destructing the whole time, I was not willing to look at that. I'm just I just literally rode it all the way till I self-destructed. And then I think for me, my personal experience is it was easy to ask for help because I messed it up so horrifically badly. I went from being a millionaire on paper and having hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash to having $170,000 mortgage on my parents' house that I couldn't bankrupt out of. And so I didn't have any of the cool people that were surrounding me, because I had a whole bunch of sycophants, right? And beautiful girlfriends and all of this stuff. And I talk about the red beanbag moment for me was I'll try and do the short version. Basically, we'd ruined this house, and I couldn't move out. I needed the bond back, whereas normally I would just like be like, send me the bill. And so I was squatting in this house. I told them I'd move out to get an extra week's rent. I was painting the walls, doing jib stopping, all of this just stuff I had never had to do. Listening to a Sam Harris podcast, I'd eaten KFC, I was sleeping on a beanbag, and I dropped this paint roller and it smashed paint everywhere. I mean, all over my pants, all over my legs. And I was just like, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I sat back on this beanbag and I just burst into tears, started crying. And I just remember it. It's so visceral. And I was like, you are a gigantic fuck up. Like, what a loser. Like, why? What? And so I guess it was so traumatic that it was just like, and I remember just thinking, nah, no way. I'm moving home. I'm going to fix this. And then so looking on it, and maybe the psychedelics helped to some degree, maybe just the abject failure, the desire to support my parents, whatever the greater good was, I was able to go, nothing else matters but the result, and I can't do it by myself. So I'm going to find people to help, and then just no ego. Like, I don't care. I'll just constantly searching for help and support and smarter people always, in everything. Yeah, and just really that big long story was coming to, if you can let go of your ego, you'll ask for help. And if you ask for help, you'll get there faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a magic combination, man, because you're clearly not confident in your abilities either. You have that kind of combination of, yeah, I believe in what I can do, but I know that the application of this is going to be, I'm going to have 1% of the impact it could have if I wasn't partnered with these great people. So I think that's inspiring.
Absolutely, man. I talk about, I used to say, like, I've got no ego, but I definitely do. And it's huge. Mm-hmm. But I try to, like, I think now the word is like a permeable ego. So it's big, right, but as soon as you like present me a logical case or some value or whatever, I'm just like, oh, boom. Sometimes it'll take a minute, 2 hours or a day, but I pride myself on being like, no, I'm wrong. Let it go. Boom. That now you're right. Let's go. And so just not allowing that lower self within you to slow you down for no gain. And it's so hard, right? It's weird how it's so hard. You have a discussion for 30 minutes and you've been arguing a point, and then you realize you're wrong. And there's just this, your whole like soul and being doesn't want to admit it. It's like, yeah, it's like anathema. You're instantly like, oh my God, I don't want to have to do this. But when you can, it's a superpower for sure.
Yeah. I think the introspection, I think this has been, the most valuable. It's all been valuable, but I think this is a most valuable part of the conversation, is like examining what you're good at, what you're not good at, asking people to tell you, and listening to them when they tell you is just incredibly powerful. And, this is a case study in doing that properly.
It's very hard. And that's one of the things I've always admired about you, and like working, and maybe we connected on, is we could just have like candid, frank conversations. We generally mean well, we want to achieve, but there was like a, I don't know, it's not that. Yeah, it's just I thought I was going to say something super eloquent to like reframe it perfectly, but I didn't have anything. So yeah, maybe we'll just shout out my Instagram and wrap it up, unless there's one more good question.
Not Instagram, mate. Twitter. Remember, Twitter.
You mean maybe both? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you can tweet about your Instagram. So if you want people to get on your Instagram, that's what we need to do. We did get like 20, 30 questions here that we didn't get to, because I think that thread about the introspective side of this stuff and the personal development is going to come across way better on video. Some of these I think we could answer on Twitter or
if you want, maybe we could try and do a little quick fire 5 questions. I'll try and answer them in like 60 seconds.
Okay. All right. We got a book question. What book have you gifted the most?
The one by the guy that built the system for McDonald's, the E-Myth.
Oh yeah. Great book.
Yeah.
E-Myth Revisited.
About the visionary, the entrepreneur, the technician, and the manager, like those concepts.
Great book.
Yeah. I'm like a visionary and a technician. That's what I'm good at. figure out which one you are and
lean in. Yeah. You mentioned ad spend is undervalued. Why is that?
Undervalued relative to the future, and it always will be. And so what I think people do is it's like, oh, it was way more profitable last year, I don't want to spend at scale XYZ. Oh, it's too late. And so you're constantly in this process of chasing your tail and not going all in or as far in as you could do, because you're comparing backwards. Whereas if you flip your frame of perspective and go, look forward, and it's only going to get more expensive than it is today, then you'll go harder now. And over the long term, you acquire more customers and get better outcomes.
Awesome. Great answer. How do you compare the opportunity today and into 2021 between Amazon FBA and standalone e-commerce brands?
I don't know enough about Amazon FBA to comment effectively on that.
Fair enough. All right.
But I think the opportunity exists within direct to consumer, and there's probably some sort of hybrid thing that would be awesome. Test both, and if you've got a viable brand and product, and then lean into the one that gives you the best results or that you find most intuitive.
So a question from George. He says, thank you, Simon, first of all. But the question is, how do you find the necessary focus to manage two very demanding businesses with an agency and a logistics business? Both are growing very fast and very different variables.
So I am responsible with Matt, my CEO, for running Glass Elephant. Kennedy generally runs the collab, the creative business, and then Brad runs supply chain solutions. So again, to be clear, this is not vertical integration. It's not marketers doing logistics and logistics guys making videos. It is a group of three separate, technically sound businesses that have come together to operate as one. And so each person is running their channel. And so supply chain solutions and Brad own a significant chunk of Glass Elephant. And then Glass Elephant owned a significant chunk of Collab, but then now we've sort of amalgamated and absorbed Collab. And so it was kind of the granddad business, Supply Chain Solutions, that had the infrastructure, been around 20 years, had the funding, brought GE in, been around a few years, a bit bigger, and then brought Collab in. And so that's been our kind of pathway to success. Because I don't really look at the logistics business. I don't have to worry about it.
Nice.
I focus on my knitting.
So yeah, another technical question is, at what point does a brand need to invest in software to get into managing commerce operations like listing management, catalog, EDI, etc.? I think this is more generally, I'd be interested for your take on, like, what are the stages of maturity of an e-commerce business and what, like, general milestones?
Sure. My personal view, and this is actually in my personal view, is that as late as possible. We've run on Shopify alone without an inventory management Sin 7, anything like that, all the way up to $25 million, Shopify and zero. Like, that's good enough. Are you doing multiple regions and countries? You probably need some inventory management stuff. Like, are you a manufacturing business with a whole bunch of different lines? Maybe you need some manufacturing software. My view is really simple: Shopify, zero, a few apps, Asana to run your tasks out of, and then we leave that stuff and those layers of complexity as late as they need to be. A new app, a new layer, a new something won't often remove all of your problems or make you all this extra money. I think we look to them as our saviors, but they're more tools that should be only utilized when they're absolutely needed. And that's something that's probably in contradiction with the party line of our whole business, actually. And it's something that there's a bit of tension around, but that's my view, is because I think you can get lost in the weeds in it, and you'd be better off making one more really good top of funnel video that drives product and figuring out the variation or the next level up to your product, like the 20 that delivers the 80. So if it ain't broke, do you really need to improve it that much more? But if it's breaking on you, get the inventory management system.
Awesome.
That's my view.
So I think the last question, which will come nicely off the back of that question, is let's talk about the formula that you mentioned earlier on in the conversation, which was really about like breaking even, getting your AOV right. If you're in this situation, what are the levers you should pull to, get to a stage where you are, ready for growth? Like how do you evaluate getting to that point?
How do I evaluate when I'm ready to grow?
No, the formula that you have a product that's going to work, like what should you be looking for on the
metrics front?
The metrics front. Yeah. So
generally a 70 plus margin minimum, ideally 80, so that after your product, your freight, your pick pack, or whatever costs it takes to get it out the door, your packaging, you've got around 60 plus. You want a 60% gross profit margin, in my view. And then you want your average order value generally above $100.
Mm-hmm.
Conversion rate is so varied. But if your average order value is $100, then 2 to 4% is a nice range to live within. And then your cost per click is so dependent on what regions you're in, who you're targeting. But generally, if you're getting that around $1 to $1.50, that's a really nice place to be in. But if you get that right piece of content that hits, you can get it as low as 50 cents, and that's where that extra ROAS will come from. But if you go a 3% conversion rate with $100 AOV and $1 a click, cost you $100 to drive the traffic, and 3 of those people bought at 300. So you got a $300 total revenue, and then your GP on that's 60%. So you've spent $100, you've returned $180 in GP, and at that point with a 3, you're generally a little bit above break even, which is, if you're looking to grow and scale, that's where you want to live. You want to be above that break even point and acquiring as many customers as possible.
Awesome, man. And I want you to plug the Shopify workshops that you've already put together, because you can go obviously super deep into this, but that stuff really drills down into the nuances of building and selling online.
Yeah, and so we got some value from the chat there, but they said I need a valuable link in my Twitter bio, so I'm quickly becoming a bit of a Twitter powerhouse. So I'll put the link to the Shopify series in my Twitter bio, and maybe I could just take people through it like in a minute now. Everything with me takes so long, eh? But basically it's a 4-part webinar series, which is the essential things you need to know. So starting with, what does engineering an authentic brand look like? The conceptual framework that your business will sit on. What's the story? Who are you? What's special about you? Then optimizing the website for conversion, how to build a good landing page. Simple, just really simple, important stuff to know. Then how to create really good performance content. What does a top of funnel video look like? How do you build testimonials, etc.? And then the best practice for taking that content, put it on Facebook. So basically set up your brand to create a unique value proposition, set up your optimal environment for conversion on the website, make a bunch of content, put it in the right places on Facebook, drive traffic to that website, make some money. And so I think this is likely the most concise, effective resource for Facebook, Instagram, Shopify marketing on the planet. And it's free. People sell that stuff in courses for hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not fully granular and totally detailed, but it's a really good framework to follow.
Beautiful, man. We'll definitely get it in the bio. We'll also stick it in the YouTube video description. And another plug for Ecom Simo on Twitter. You're in the 3 figures now, mate. I just checked.
Am I really? There we go.
Man. We're flying. So everybody, thank you for, there's a lot of people middle of the night, early in the morning, late in the evening. Thank you so much for coming through. And there was a few questions we couldn't get to. Sorry about that, but get on to Simon on Twitter.
Send them to me. I'll answer on my Twitter.
All right. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll catch you soon. Cheers. Cheers. Enjoy the holiday.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You as well, mate.